guys, it's Miss Gilmer. I wanted to try and do the video for the parents that could not attend our AFTT night. That was this past Tuesday, February the 6th, 2018. Basically, we were focusing on mid-year data. So what I'm going to do is just pull up my Google slide that I did that night and just do my spiel. And we went ahead and sent home the packets that we had that night. And I know that it had math games inside. They have ordered supplies, the deck of cards and the pair of dice to play those games, but we were waiting on shipping and they have not gotten here. So as soon as they come in, I will put the deck of cards and 2 dice in a baggie for your child. Sorry. So let me go ahead and share my screen, and I'll try to make this just short and sweet. And if you have any other questions, you can dojo me. You guys know, door's always open. So let's go ahead and share this. Get it set up. Here we go. Just a little slow go. Loading. Oh, come on now. Sorry, guys. All right. So this is just the first screen. So what I'm going to discuss is our MOY stands for middle of year data. Where do we go from here? We're going to talk about the games that are inside of the packets that we sent home and setting goals, which that sheet should have been put in your packet as well. So we have been assessing the kids. We assessed them before they got out for the winter break, and we started assessing them again once we returned, and we got back into school with all that snowy, inclement weather that we had. So this slide reflects before they got out for winter break. We used North Carolina's mid-year benchmark for math, and it consisted of about 10 different tasks, and 7 of those tasks focused on word problems. And the word problems can consist of anything from missing add-ins, where it's like 3 plus something is the same as 5, but in word problem form, and hearing how many each of the people in the story problem had, and determining how many more one had than the other, or how many fewer one had than the other. And that got a lot of our folks just hearing that and not necessarily knowing how to determine that, what order of operations they needed to use in order to determine that. So as you look here, this yellow, and let me explain how they were graded. There were 3 different levels that you could get. You could get not yet, which means they really just did not know what to do with these word problems, or they just automatically added everything and didn't listen to what was actually happening in the story problem. Then the second is progressing, where they may have had some knowledge as to what to do, made a careless error, miscounted, or when they were drawing, their picture did not match what their answer was. So we needed it to be able to match. And then not reflected in this graph, there was mastery, which means that they understood the word problems and they could just be able to show the work and have the correct answer and not make any of those careless errors. So you can see it's about half and half here in progressing. So what I tried to do is look at all 7 word problems, and as progressing, they had to get 5 or more correct. And just let me tell you, the ones that kept them from getting into mastery were these that asked about how many fewer or how many more. That prevented some of these guys from having mastery of these word problems. And then these guys over here, they got 4 or less correct. And these guys typically just listened to the word problem and immediately said, I'm just going to add these numbers together, and didn't listen to see if the birds flew away or if somebody ate the cookie. They just saw the 2 numbers, put them together, and thought that they were doing the right thing. So based on this, we have created word problem groups during math time that we're intervening with and having the kids slow down, making them act out the word problems with manipulatives, any kind of type of counters, make them draw it out so they can physically see what's happening to the number or see what's happening as far as understanding what's happening to the word problem and what operation that they need to do in order to figure out the answer or the solution to that word problem. One of the other concepts or standards that we tested was place value. At the time that we had taught, or we had not taught this, but at the time we assessed this, we had not discussed place value at all. So these scores reflect what the kids have learned from kindergarten and were able to retain and apply here in first grade. Some of the questions were counting items that were above 10. So there were just rows, very linear rows, so they could make sure that they weren't double counting and tell me how many were there, just very simple counting and writing the number down. Then there was a scattered array. It was like beans or hats or something that they just splattered all over the page. And the kids were responsible for counting out groups of 10 and circling that so that they could understand that they'd already counted that group. And then they had to take that knowledge of how many groups of 10 or how many circles did they make of 10, and then how many leftovers, how many didn't quite make 10. And that was really, really difficult for the kids. They're so used to counting and then writing, but then I was making them show me with 10s and 1s, and they just didn't have that skill. Then discriminating quantities in different formats. So that is just your greater than, less than, or same as. They got to see it in numeral form where it would be like 43 and 53, and they would have to say that 43 is less than 53. That was pretty strong for the kids. They could really look at those numerals and differentiate that and determine that 53 was greater than 43 and 43 was less than 53. But when we showed them in different formats, like we showed them tens frames, so it would be 53 in tens frames and 43 in tens frames, they got a little confused, some of them, not all of them, but they weren't really sure what they were supposed to do. So that quantity discrimination in actual seeing the quantity form. Then they had an equation where they would have something like 18, and then on the other side, it would be 10 plus 8. And then they needed to determine that 18 is the same as 10 plus 8. So they needed to use that equal sign or same as sign. And they need to understand that they were trying to balance the equation, make it equal. And the other way that they were presented with these quantities were written out in that place value format where they would say they had 3 10s and 2 1s. And on the other side, it would say 2 10s and 3 1s. And so they needed to determine that 2 10s and 3 1s is 23 and 3 10s and 2 1s is 32. So listening to that and internalizing that and then understanding that 32 is more than 23, but they needed to be able to understand what they meant with 3 10s and 2 1s. Hopefully that makes sense. So that got some of the kids too. As you can see, this is pretty strong for us. We had one child that got every single one of those right. Then we had a little pocket of kids that just did not understand. And even with the numeral, they just did not know what to do. And then we had a whole slew of kids in this progressing, and they maybe just got tripped up on that final one where it listed as in 10s and 1s. So I feel really good about what they did here because we had not taught this skill yet, and they were coming with knowledge that they've gained in kindergarten. And it's been a while since we touched place value in kindergarten. So this is a strength for us. I feel really, really good about this. Then the final thing was geometry. And I'll tell you, we have not taught geometry. Geometry is weeks away. So whatever knowledge that they have, again, was taught in kindergarten. This consisted of 2 different tasks. The first one was to visually discriminate. They were told to pick out, they were given a specific shape, and then they were shown other shapes to say, is this that shape? So if they said, find the triangle, and they were shown a circle, is this a triangle? They needed to either circle, yes, it's a triangle, or no, it's not a triangle. And there were about 7 different shapes that they presented to them. They turned the shape, so they needed to be able to discriminate regardless of orientation of the shape, whether it was upside down or on its side, that it remained a triangle regardless. Then they needed to, for the second half of the task, was to draw the shape and list any attributes that they knew about that shape. So if it was triangle, they would need to draw a 3-sided figure. And then they needed to list the attributes that a triangle is a polygon. That means it's a closed shape. It has 3 sides and 3 vertices. So we were looking for that. And we weren't using triangle, just to let you know, because if we had, I think we would have had a lot better numbers than this. But this was a weakness for us. But having not covered it and having not discussed any kind of shape attributes, I'm really proud of the progressing students that fell into this. So here is another assessment tool that we use. This is called AimsWeb Plus. This was given to your children when they returned back to school from the winter break. And we were desperately trying to get them to be assessed through all the snow. So we would start one, and then we'd have those 2 or 3 days we were out, and then try to start another. This is kind of a lot of different standards. We worked on fluency, so looking at math facts like 2 + 3 and 5 take away 2. They were mixed math facts, so you had addition and subtraction mixed in. So they not only had to be fluent, but they also had to make sure that they were looking at that sign, and that got a couple of our kids. Then there was a quantity discrimination, fluency, where they had to look at 2 numbers and identify the number that was largest, and they had to verbally say the name of the number. And if they mixed it up, if they called 2112, they would get marked wrong because they did not say the number correctly. Both of those fluency activities, they got 60 seconds to go through, and they're listed on a page, and they would point and give the answer. Then there was a section that worked through a whole slew of different standards, things like time, which we have not covered yet, other things like place value, word problems, being able to determine if the math that was done through the equation was correct or not. That was a toughie. So they had to do some mental math. They also had to do some geometry and some fractions, because we start working on early fractions in 1st grade. And when I talk fractions, I'm just talking about taking a shape and cutting it in half so you have 2 parts, or cutting it into fourths so that you have 4 parts. We introduce it in 1st grade, and they start building on it. So if we get them a solid foundation with those types of fractions, when they get up in the higher grades, they're able to build on that. We also had some geometry using 2D and 3D shapes, and listening to positional words and determining which figure I was talking about on the page. And another thing, there was another fluency activity where they were doing 10 more or 10 less, but it was written in equation form. So it would be something like 15 + 10. and they needed to be able to go 25. So we've been working on that and getting a lot more fluent with that. They could tell me if I asked them what's 10 more than 15, they had it, but they did not make the connection that 15 plus 10 is the same thing as me asking what's 10 more than 15. So we needed to work on that whole vocabulary and terminology and understanding what was being asked of them. So this, you have a paper inside of your packet that tells you where your child falls on this graph, this continuum. The light blue is for beginning of the year. So we had quite a few kids, 13 kids right here in the middle of the road. This is their proficient. According to like the national average, they're right on target where they should be. And again, we had not taught all of these skills. So I felt really, really good with what the kids were able to do. This kind of lighter yellow, at the beginning of the year, we had 3 kids and this was slightly below grade level. So they just missed it. Some of these kids just missed it by 1 point. Then this kind of orangey red color here, we had 2 kids at the beginning of the year that were well below grade level. This kind of blue-green here is slightly above grade level. So we had 2 kids at the beginning of the year in this area. And then we had 1 child that was well above grade level. So looking at what's inside of your folder, you'll be comparing it to these dark blue bars here. We maintained 13, but I will tell you it's not the same 13 kids because we had some movement from at grade level to slightly above grade level. This was a great transition here. We had 1 child I know move from well below into slightly below. And so that was a big achievement. I'm super proud of that child. And then we had some kids move from that slightly below into the proficient or at the right on grade level category. And then this was the same child here at well above. And like I said, we had some kids move out of at grade level to slightly above grade level. So I was really impressed with our math scores. That's super strong strength. Even though these are really, really good, I went back in and I analyzed the data. And just like our North Carolina benchmark that we gave before we got out for Christmas break or winter break, word problems were the ones that kind of impacted them negatively. So even though they may be here on grade level, I did look at what items they missed and if I needed to put them in the word problem group during math centers. And so they are going to have that time with another teacher, working with them, developing those skills in order to be able to solve word problems. And I'm already seeing progress with that because I keep weekly data, check in with them every 2 weeks, give them a word problem and have them show their work. And I check in with the entire class to make sure that we're not having anybody fall through the cracks. But I definitely keep up with the kids that are in that word problem group for my small group plan for instruction. So if you have any questions about where your child falls, please, again, Jojo me. This is Ames Web Plus for math. So just to kind of go over our areas of strength, we retained a lot of knowledge of place value and basic visual discrimination of geometry shapes. So having all of that from kindergarten, and we haven't been taught these things in first grade quite yet. They haven't shown up on our pacing guide, or the snow has impacted our ability to be able to teach it. I felt really, really positive about what they did bring to the table. So it shows me I've got a lot of solid foundation to build upon, and it will not take very long to get that growth and have them meet that expectation. This is a very, very smart group of kids, super proud of them. But our areas of need, just because I went back in and I analyzed like what problems, what items were giving them the most trouble as far as within the North Carolina benchmark and with the Ames Web Plus. And again, it was word problems. Some of the kids, they did not take the time to listen to what was happening in the story problem and just immediately just added the 2 numbers together. And you could call them out on it, but I can't do it during an assessment. So what I do is I pull them over after, give them a similar word problem. They took the two adding together, and I would go, but what happened in that story problem? The birds flew away. They did not fly too. We weren't putting together. And then you'd get that, and I tell them they have to slow down. These guys are so competitive and they're so worried about somebody finishing before them that I'm trying to get them to slow down and focus more on giving me the quality of work rather than just speeding through it and making careless errors. Because once we had them slow down, they started to see, oh, well, that makes sense. So that's something that the teacher is working on in those word problems. It's not a race. Take your time, draw it out, use these manipulatives, find out what's going on in the problem so that you can solve it appropriately. So what can you do to help? Any math problems, usually with the Engage units, when we send home work, we're working on measurement right now, but they'll still put word problems at the back of the page that they can work on, and get those manipulatives out: beans, M&Ms, pennies, anything that they can count that can serve as a purpose of like a placeholder, or have them draw it out, because that's what we've been working on in the room. Draw it out, see it, be part of it, truly understand what's going on with this word problem so that you can solve it and use the best strategies. Excuse me. And if you see them going in the wrong direction, just, say, hold up, wait a minute. What is this word problem asking you for? Are they asking you to add it to have an altogether whole number? Or do you already know the whole number and one of the parts? Have them break it down into maybe whole part, and see if that, using that technique helps them figure out what they're looking for. So I wanted to discuss a little bit about reading. I know that our focus for AFTT was math, but I know you're curious about reading, as I was, as the numbers were coming in, and I try to keep everybody updated and would send dojo messages to make sure that you had the most up-to-date information. Once again, I wanted to compare beginning of the year with the light blue to middle of the year with the dark blue. And when we meet again, I'll post the end of year. It'll be after that, but I'll put it on Dojo and send you home their little Running Man report so that you can see where your child fell within the dynamic of the classroom. But the mid-year goal was a G, so that's why we've got a G right here in highlighted or in a little box. As you can see, with the blue, the light blue, we are, focused more on to the left side of the G, which is, where they're coming in at the beginning of the year. We had a lot of E's, like 12 E's at the beginning of the year, which was awesome. They were doing what they were supposed to. They retained that knowledge from kindergarten. We had 4 G's at mid-year, and then the dark blue represents our mid-year growth. So you can see we've pulled away from this RB, which is very simple text, being able to answer just simple questions about how text works, how print works. And our level B, which is another very repetitive, very picture-supported text. We had people move out of those areas into our CD range, which was awesome. I will say that my little RB that was down here at the beginning of the year moved all the way to E, was able to read that F, just got tripped up on some of those comprehension questions. So super proud of that child. Hard work, a year's growth in half a year's time, which is awesome. These kids are super hard workers, and I appreciate the amount of time and energy they put into their learning. And I appreciate what you guys as parents put into your child's learning and their success, because we wouldn't have this kind of growth if it weren't for parents. So we do have some work to do, looking at the data that came in, because I was not allowed to assess the kids. We used our reading specialist for that. And so I had to rely heavily on the notes that they provided me, from when the children read. Had to wait to get back their written comprehension questions to see what happened, why they missed it. Were they completely off base, or did they just, miss it by not supporting it with the detail? So looking at all of that, one of the strengths or things that was repetitive over and over again was these kids are great decoders. It is effortless. It is automatic. They are fluent readers, which means they're not reading word by word. They're phrasing. They're putting 3 to 4 words together when they read, and reading with expression. And that means reading like the character would read it. And that's showing that they are truly comprehending when they are adding that expression piece into their reading. So I was really, really, really proud of that. What I was noticing is that, again, with these super confident kids, which I'm so glad that they're confident, but I do want them to know that you can't always be confident. You've got to make sure that you're right. And they didn't go back to the text. They thought that it was in their head. They knew enough details to support their answer, and they answered the question without using the text as a reference. Like we learned at the beginning, our first AFTT, and then in kindergarten, we use the RAP method, where you restate the question, you answer the question, and you prove you're right with details from the text. So going back, using that text to say, hey, here's the answer, and here's why I think it's the answer. Here's the places in the book that led me to believe that this is the answer. So if you're working with your child at home, no, they can open that book, use that book to answer the questions. The only time that they cannot open the book for the reading specialist during that assessment is when they're doing a retell to tell what happens at the beginning, middle, and end. And other than that, all the other questions, that book is fair game. I tell them that book is their best friend, because that book is going to tell them the answers. So open it. Love that book. He is the one that's going to pull you through. And the kids all laugh at me. I told them I was going to put big old lips on the book so that the book would give them a kiss and tell them the answer. And they think I'm crazy, but it's impacted a lot of them now, where they're like, I'm not going to give you that answer until I find it in the text. Sometimes I'll even close up my ears, put my hands over my ears, and say, don't you tell me yet until you find it in the book. Prove to me you're right before you start telling me. So that's what we're working on. That was one of the big things that prevented them from moving on to the next level. They have the chops. They can read it. They do understand what they are reading. We're getting into these more complex texts, and it makes them think more, and they're having to infer more, which means they're using the knowledge that they have about life and what's happening within the story to make educated guesses about why these things are happening. And this is happening in literature, these fiction texts, as well as nonfiction or factual texts. Why is the animal doing this in the story? They need to be able to understand what facts that they learned about this animal and why it's necessary for this animal to behave this way, if that kind of makes sense. So you can look at this graph, look at your Running Man report. That's the colored one that's inside of your packet, and kind of see where your child falls on this spectrum of kids. I'm hard on myself. It bothers me that I have some E and F kids. So I started really reflecting and determining, like, what did I do wrong? I'm not pointing the finger at your kids at all. I'm like, what did I miss? These kids were rocking it out in class. What did I do wrong? And so I'm going back and reinforcing, using that text, trusting your brain. You know what to do. These strategies are in place. you can do it. So just know that I'm on top of it. Please, if you have any questions or concerns, that's what I'm here for. Let me know. I want these kids, the level that they're supposed to be by the end of first grade is J. I'm not going to stop once they get to J. I'm not going to throw my hands up and say, you know, done, you know, because we've got 2 kids that are already there. I've got 1 J and 1 L, but I'm not stopping with those kids. I'm going to continue to challenge them. I'm having to look at these kids and pull in second grade standards so that they're not just sitting there stagnant and wasting the second half of their first grade year. I'm going to keep pushing them and keep challenging them so that they're going to continue to make growth, just like I would with these kids at C, D, E, and F, G, and H. I'm going to keep challenging them. I'm going to keep putting supports in place so when these higher level questions come in, that they have the chops and they have the strategies to make this attainable, if that makes sense. So reading strengths, we talked about that just a minute ago, that decoding and reading with fluency and expression is a strength with the entire class. The needs, using that text to prove the answer is correct, and then slowing down to make sure you answered all the parts of the question. That tripped up a couple of that J and that L. They were actually read higher, and there were 2 parts of the question. They answered the first one and thought they were done. So they weren't able to move on or achieve that level because they didn't read through the entire question and answer all parts of it. Another thing is stamina, being able to write. It's a lot of writing with this. And there are 2 questions the kids are given, and the lowest score of those 2 questions is the score that determines whether or not they make proficiency at that level. So if they give everything they got on the first question they answer, and the second question they just don't have enough stamina to be able to powerhouse through that one, which happened a lot with these kids, they are assessed basically based on that lower one, and it sent them back a level. So we're going to do lots more writing. I know they're going to hate it, but I'm going to try to make it as fun as possible and tell them that they're trying to be big second graders now. And in second grade, you do lots of writing. So help me out with that. Get them writing after they read to you. Even though I may not send it home as a beginning, middle, and end retell, have them do that. Have them practice that. Giving those key details in that retell, making sure I know the character's name and where the story happened and what the problem was in the story and the steps they took to solve that problem. Just have them practice doing that in addition to the questions or other things that are going on in the text. So this is the take-home bags that you guys should have had sent home in the kids' folders or their book bags. They are math concentrated, but I threw in some literacy too. In these bright neon colored sheets have card and dice games. They're there to increase automaticity, which means being able to look at it and know it automatically. So math facts to 10. Knowing that if I have 6, I need 4 more, boom, that's 10. We want that automaticity with them. We want them to have automaticity with the other math facts, with their doubles, 2 + 2, 4, bam. They're not having to count on or on their fingers, that they have that knowledge that those math facts are theirs. So to help with that, I put a little trifold booklet in your take-home packet, and based on what I've assessed, again, I assessed, and have an idea of what math facts your kids have and which ones they still need to work on. So practice that. If you see them having to count it on their fingers, then it is not automatic, and just keep, practicing away every night. Just flash it at them. And then I'll assess every 2 weeks and give them time to build that automaticity. And once they get that set of math facts, I do +1s, +2s, +3s, +4s. Once they have that, then I will send home the next packet, and you can move the little facts over to the mastered, or if you put it in the homework folder, I can move them over and make sure all the facts get in all the right pockets. But it's just a nice little way to house everything so that you know what they're working on and what they've mastered and what's newly been added to your folder. Then also there is literacy. I printed out about 10 different literacy stories where the kids, you guys can read together. It's complex text. And then you're going to go back in the text to find the answers to the questions. The kids use crayons. I've purchased some things to make this close reading a lot more fun and enjoyable. Hopefully they'll get excited about using these tools and to help them find the answers within the text. And so hopefully that will come in. It's supposed to be in on Friday. We'll see. Again, shipping. But these will be things that we use in the classroom. And hopefully they'll come home and share with you what they're doing. And maybe you can pick up some of these things. You can get at the Dollar Tree. The different colored pens and pencils so that they can do a close read with you at home. Let's see. And then this is the last thing. There should be a sheet in your packet. It's goal setting. And it's like, where do you want your child to be in 6 weeks' time? And you can make this a reading goal or you can make it a math goal. Doesn't matter to me, but this just lets us know what we're both working towards. If it's reading goal, you might want to set it as like level. If you look on their Running Man sheet and you see that maybe they're having difficulty with nonsense words, so that would be like blending nonsense words, and the majority of the class does not have that problem. But if you want to build that automaticity of blending these words, you know, just look at their assessment data so you can have an idea of what it is that you want us to work on together. I'm working on all of it, but that will just be something that you're aware of, that you want to physically work on at home, and I'm working on it at school, and we can see some growth happening there. But think in terms of like by March 20th, you want your child to be at this level or be able to have automaticity with these math facts. You know, you decide, or talk to your child, and maybe the two of you decide what it is that they want to be good at. I appreciate, I know I've said this time and time again, but I so appreciate everything that you guys do. I feel so supported, and I love these kids so much. I just am so excited that I got to loop up with them. They're such a great group of kids. We have such a good relationship. We laugh, we joke around, you know, we give hugs and we all know when each other needs those hugs. And the kids are just so supportive of each other. They get really excited when somebody gets one of those Ask Me stickers or makes growth, because they're just very aware of what their friends need. They're very in tune with each other. So this has just been just a great opportunity for me to be with these kids, because they make teaching just so easy, because they're just so eager to learn, and I enjoy it very, very much. So if you have any questions and concerns, you know, you can dojo me, you can email me at hgilmer@asheboro.k12.nc.us, or you can call the school. I am doing the after-school tutoring in our after-school program. So I'm working with kindergarten, first and second graders 3 days a week. And so I may not be able to get to you like right after school, but as soon as I finish up, our wonderful secretary, Ms. Purdue, can leave me a message through an email or in my mailbox here at school, and I can get back with you after I finish tutoring. But just know that I'm not ignoring you. It'll just be after my tutoring duties are done, those 3 days a week. So I'm guessing that's it for now. That was everything that we discussed in our AFTT night. I know I talked a whole lot, but that's all. And thanks, guys, for listening. Hope you've had a great weekend.